Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Happy Hour podcast. Of course, my name's Ray. I'm here with Matt, and Socrates is joining us because Mike could not make it this week. Yep. And we are live with the man who was Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, Part 6. CJ Graham, how you doing tonight, man?
Great, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing good. We're the best you can be during, COVID. But, of course, with the podcast, being able to do stuff like this, it makes it a lot easier. So how have you been, man? I know when we were talking, trying to set all this up, you said you just recently moved. How'd all that stuff go for you?
Good. I retired about three and a half years ago. I bought a ranch in Arizona, and a few months back, my wife and I just started talking, and we decided we're going to retire elsewhere. So we moved up to Montana.
Oh wow! So are you right directly in the mountains?
Oh, I'm in the mountains. I've got 3-4 deer in the backyard right now. If I go out there, and a dozen turkeys went through the backyard earlier today, and it's definitely the wildlife.
Up there in God's country.
Yeah, God's country. He's actually right in Jason Voorhees territory. That's the kind of territory where you look out back and you see Jason just standing out there looking through your back window.
Well, unfortunately, I own a barn too. So just imagine walking and opening my barn doors and guess who's standing there? Yours truly.
Yeah. Now, CJ, how often, now we know you played Jason in Part 6. You do a lot of the conventions. Even today, how often do you go out and people notice you and they go, hey, it's CJ, you played Jason, Friday the 13th, part 6. How is that? The fans are great. Like, I grew up a huge Friday the 13th fan. Me, myself, I was excited for this interview because Zombie Jason, you were the first Zombie Jason. That's my favorite Jason is the Zombie Jason. How is that going out and meeting and greeting with the fans?
Well, I appreciate being your favorite, but don't tell Kane Hodder that, okay? Just as far as going out, quite frequently, quite honestly, the other day I had to go pick up some machetes, and the young man bringing the machetes out to the truck was like, CJ Graham. He immediately Googled me while I was standing there. He goes, no way. And yeah, it's a Friday the 13th party. So he was giving me these machetes, and it is quite often that I'm out and about, and if they don't know exactly who CJ Graham is face-wise, they do know the character Friday the 13th, Jason.
Oh, yeah. That's impressive considering you wear a mask in the movie and all these people still recognize you all these years later.
Yeah.
It's true, Matt. Ray, guys, you think about it. I always tell people an example. There's 1.3 billion people in India. You show a picture of Tom Cruise, everybody knows who he is. You show a picture of CJ Graham, they shrug their shoulders. You turn it over and show them a picture of Jason Voorhees, they know Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
how was that playing such an iconic character? Was it intimidating at all?
Nah, we didn't understand the magnitude. We're 3 decades later. I don't think you guys were old enough to poop your pants when I did this movie. Either one of you.
I was probably pooping my pants.
Yeah. I think so.
I was probably a baby.
It's funny.
When you're on it.
True story, though. You think about it. So I'm very humble to sit here and talk to you and the fans that they're 7 years old, they're 70 years old, and it's a humbling experience, unexpected but very appreciated.
And what year was Part 6?
1986. What year were you born?
Oh man, so I was a year old, man.
You were still in your diapers. Mom and Dad were wiping your booty.
I was 5, so I was like just beyond pooping my pants.
Wah.
And see, my love for Friday the 13th and just horror in general really comes from my mom. Because when I was a kid, my mom, any Friday the 13th, they would have a marathon. Halloween, obviously, you had the Halloween movies. And my dad would always be working or he'd be out with his buddies. And she'd be too scared to watch them by herself. So what would she do? She would watch them with me. And I guess seeing how scared I was, gave her comfort. So it's the whole thing of I just grew up with it. And then it's like, Jason ended up, just being one of those types of things. Now, before Friday the 13th, Part 6, if I'm correct, you were a stuntman, correct?
No,
you weren't a stuntman. Okay, so how did I know a lot of the Friday the 13th actors were stuntmen.
All of them
ended up doing the stunts. How did Friday the 13th, Part 6 happen for you, CJ?
And that's the funny part. I mean, only until maybe 5 years ago, Kane Hodder, a buddy of mine, and Steve Dash, we were on a panel just talking about stunt careers. And they asked me what school I went to and my prior stunt work, and I was like 0. That was the first time I'd ever been set on fire, or 20 feet underwater, breathing off a regulator, or going through doors or walls. It was just part of the contract, and being 20 something and reasonably young and healthy and with attitude, bad attitude, I thought I can do all this, so I stepped on screen and went to work.
Yeah. And also, I see that you also played Hell Cop, and that was a fun movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember watching it as a kid. And Hell Cop just was a fun ride, just for what it was.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The movie itself is very intriguing. It's got some good dialogue, script to it. I don't speak again. I play a cop from hell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Himdale, the company that made it, bankruptcy the entire production of their entire film production, not just of Hell Cop, but other films.
Really?
So it kind of just sat on the shelf. And MGM United Artists bought the library a few years back and recently has distributed it into a Blu-ray. But up to that point, a lot of people didn't realize. I mean, it's got people like Christy Swanson in it. It's got Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's younger brother, in it. Lita Ford, Rock and Roll Hall, singer. You may not remember Patrick Bergin. He plays the devil, but he was opposite of Julia Roberts in Sleeping with the Enemy.
Really?
So there are some high-powered people in it.
So would you say that's kind of become a cult classic?
Yeah. And do you ever heard a guy named Ben Stiller?
Oh, yeah.
He had about 6 seconds in it.
Really?
Huh.
True story.
I did not know that.
Yep. His mother, his father in it.
And one thing with Friday the 13th Part 6, which makes it my favorite, is I think some of the best kill scenes in the franchise were in that movie. And, you look at it, you have the scene where you take the cop and you fold him completely in half, like you're folding a sheet. You have the scene where you hop down from the trees, you behead 3 people at one time. And then you also have the scene where you're in the RV and you take the person and you put their face into the metal and their face is imprinted in the metal and the RV flips over and you're just standing up on top of it. And, everything that came along with that one, I'm like, this is the ideal Friday the 13th. Everything that came with it, just how Jason was presented. To you, what do you think was the best kill? Your favorite kill in that
My
movie?
favorite kill will always be the sheriff, just bending him over backwards and snapping his vertebrae. I just think that's incredibly powerful. It's really not about the blood and the guts, to be honest. I mean, that's nice and that's a lot of effects, but just the power that it would take to take an arm and pull it out of the socket and rip it out.
Oh, yeah.
Pull a head off and twist it off. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
Being wrestlers, we can appreciate that.
And I mean, that's just the brutality of Jason. And that's what I always liked. And that's what made Jason different from Freddy Krueger. Obviously Freddy, he comes to get you in your dreams. Michael Myers, Michael Myers is kind of brutal, but Jason is just probably like, he doesn't care. He'll rip your arms off. He'll rip your legs off. He'll put, a bottle opener through your forehead. He'll shoot you with a spear gun. It's like there's no limits. And every time I watch the movies, I'm like, how creative are they going to get? Because, you watch some of the newer ones, and some of the newer ones don't have that flavor. They don't have that whole, what's Jason going to kill them with in that movie? They mainly have him focus on the machete. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but I like a lot of the whole folding the sheriff in half and, those kind of deaths.
I love my Freddy Krueger brother and my Michael Myers brother, but Freddy was a pedophile, so much for that idea.
Yeah.
And Michael Myers, I mean, hey, let me remind you, real men use a machete, not an Outback steak knife. So I will tell you, we're all related, Leatherface included. We're all from the same neighborhood. We've all done very well for ourselves, all 4 of us, and we'll just keep marching along.
And, of course, all this is caught in limbo still, the Friday the 13th stuff with this lawsuit from, the original producers. When do you think actually, where do you think Friday the 13th goes in your mind once this lawsuit is over with? Now, we know you were in Friday the 13th Vengeance, which was a fan film. I watched that the first night it was released. I watched it, and I loved it. You played Elias Voorhees, which for the first time, I believe, Elias was introduced into the world of Friday the 13th, who's Jason's father.
True.
Which was cool seeing Steve Dash in that and seeing you come back. Not only reprise your role in Friday the 13th, you weren't Jason, but you were Elias, which was cool. Where do you see, once this lawsuit's over, where you see the franchise going? What would you like to see out of Jason?
Well, I retired from running casino resorts, so I look at things through an executive telescope. I don't look at things in a personal light. Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Miller, they both have their opinions, and I totally respect it. I don't know the inside game, so there's something that we may not be aware of, to be fair. However, I hope when the decisions are made that Friday the 13th, Part 13, which will technically be the reboot of the Bloodline, I'm hoping they do 2 or 3 of them at one time and put them in a can. Use the same Jason. Change out your directors, your scripts, make sure everything has connectivity. We've learned enough through Game of Thrones and Days of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. We've learned enough through all these different Harry Potters that if there's connectivity, the series can have some real embracement by the fans. We already know Friday the 13th has a huge legion of fan followers. So Part 13 needs to be the one that reinstitutes, relaunches the platform into the next generation. So again, I look at things differently. If it was my decision, I'd put $5 million up, shoot it. Yeah. I'd pay somebody to give me the $5 million, pay them $10 million profit, and then put everything in a trust account after that until Mr. Miller and Mr. Cunningham come to terms, and then distribution of those funds. The point is, you're keeping the fans increased and intrigued to it. I mean, don't forget, the fans put us here. Fans can put you out quickly.
Oh yeah, Especially now, we're in cancel culture. That's
and that's why I say, be humble. Me sitting here talking to you guys 30 years later, I appreciate it. It's, never take advantage of the situation, and always step back as a leader and say, hey, if we hadn't done a good job and we didn't have this legion of followers, we wouldn't be having this conversation about this right now.
Yeah. Right. And we were talking about this with Mick Strawn. I think you worked with Mick on Vengeance.
Great guy.
Yeah. And we were talking to Mick. We had him on, and we were talking to him about the idea that they pitched of having Robert Englund maybe potentially come back as Freddy. He has expressed that, within the last couple of years. He did the episode of the Goldbergs as Freddy. Now, if you were approached with reprising the role as Jason, now I know you said you're retired, would you put on the hockey mask again and do Jason again?
Let me enter it this way, Ray, and I mean this. Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director of Part 6, has written a new script. He's been out there pushing it for about 1.5 years now, maybe 2 years. He's got a great timeline how he wants to go back and bring Jason into the picture, which would have been Part 7, so that Part 6 is connected to move it forward. He's been on podcasts. He's had communication with me and asked, hey, would you be interested? I mean, you're still 6'3", 6'4", 250. Physically, I'm there. He goes, I'd put you back in the wardrobe, CJ, if you do it. And my response to him was twofold. Number one, if I could do it and deliver a product as good as Part 6 or better, I'd do it. Yeah. However, if I didn't feel I could do the physicality of it or deliver a product better than Part 6 as Jason, I wouldn't want to put myself in a compromising position where they go, he was retired, he should have stayed retired. I don't want to do that. So yes, I'd entertain the options, provided I could give you, the fans, product, the quality, not quantity, quality.
Yeah, and
that's good to hear, because there's a lot of actors who would just take the payday and be like,
you guys all as wrestlers, great, you get in the ring, you do your job, payday. However, there are times that you don't want to embarrass yourself or the product.
Yeah.
The product of Jason is not something for me to go out there and make fun of or, not do a job that's well received by you, the fans. So I take that seriously. You said it that in your heart, you thought I was the best Jason, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to come back and do something you go, God, he should have stayed retired.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the whole thing. And we ran into this in the wrestling business. I'm sure I have, Socrates, you have. There's been times where we were like, hey, we don't want to work against a certain guy. And it's nothing against the guy. Yeah. It's just that, that guy's one of the worst guys on the roster.
Wrestling
and
wrestling is notorious for guys hanging on too long.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing of, well, when we go out, are we going to be able, and I mean, and wrestling's predetermined, but it's the whole thing. It doesn't matter how many times you talk it out in the back. You go out there with a certain guy, you sit there and you look at certain guys, you're like, no matter what I do, no matter how good I look, he's not going to make me look good. And if he doesn't make me look good, I can't make him look good to look good in front of these people.
I'm not going to mention any names.
Yeah.
And that's my point. Like I said, I want to be able to do the physicality and deliver, but also don't want to go to Venus. So if the script doesn't have something that's going to be powerful, and I'm not a pro where I read scripts and know, but you know what? I know the difference between going to Mars or Venus and doing a good Friday the 13th in Camp Crystal Lake. Generically, I'm smart enough to figure that out. So I'd like to stay within the realm of what Jason was created to. I think there's some opportunity for part 13 to be one badass film and really resurrect, the bloodline or the vengeance or the second coming of Jason Lives.
Yeah. And
I feel like if they're going to do a 13, it's got to be special.
Oh yeah. It's Friday the 13th, and part 13. Yeah. It's got to be huge. And my thing is there's been a lot of talks, a lot of people, and I think Never Hike Alone Part 2 or Never Hike in the Snow. I've always been intrigued by what it would be like if you had a winter setting at Crystal Lake. And that's the thing. You've never seen Jason in the snow. You've never seen him around ice. Just imagine the kill that he would have with an ice skate, or and actually that's that image of Jason standing there with a hockey stick in his hand, and he just kind of looks at the stick and he's wearing the mask, and he just kind of and it's like that would kind of just be a moment right there because he's always worn the hockey mask. So I think to me a winter setting would be amazing, and it just sets up so many different things on.
Well, I mean, think about the physical ability to take a body and throw them across a sheet of ice and watch him go sliding and slam into a rock.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, yeah. Or someone's on a snowmobile and he just takes the machete and boom, just across, and you don't see it, but all you see is just someone go by on a snowmobile with blood spurting out with no head. I mean, that's the whole Jason premise.
I think the seasonality of Jason always being in a summer camp is one thing, but the summer camp does turn into winter. And there is opportunity that the winter camp is erected at the same exact Camp Crystal Lake, but it's wintertime. And everybody stops there before they go up to the slopes to go skiing. And guess what? All hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
It can definitely work.
What would you say throughout filming that movie? Did you get any injuries or anything filming the movie? And if you did, what do you think was the hardest thing filming that movie that you had to do in Friday the 13th Part 6?
Well, I didn't get any injuries per se. I mean, not that I recall. So, you have a bad attitude, you're not going to admit it anyway. But I'd never done any of those stunts. You got to realize, setting myself on fire is not normal. When you see these flames coming over the front of your hockey mask and you're thinking very candidly, am I getting paid for this and how much? And not knowing what I don't know is every time they put me in flames or I'm underwater or doing a stunt again, they're paying you again. They pay you each time for that stunt. So I'm trying to get, one shot, one take, because I want to get it done. Yeah. Going through the door was not a big deal. Going through the wall, you got to step down a foot. So the importance of getting that first right foot, I'm right-handed, first right foot down without tripping is important. Otherwise, they got to set up that entire shot again. And that's a lot of time. That's several hours of production time setting those shots up as far as making the walls and the doors and getting the fans set up. I was lucky. I did a great job in my opinion, but I was very fortunate that I wasn't hurt. And more importantly, I didn't hurt anybody else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Richard Brooker who played Jason in Part 4. He said this. Did you do any of you delayed your scares pretty much in Part 6? Because I know he said when he would go through a window or a door, he'd sit there and he would wait. And let's say they would be like, in 5 seconds, he's going to come through. And he would wait 15 seconds. And then he would just go through to make a real scare because they weren't expecting him coming. Did you do any of that in Part 6 as well?
Well, two things. First and foremost, you've got fans out there cringing right now because you put him in part 4 and he was in part 3. So they're pissed at you already, Ray.
How do you not know that?
Number two, unfortunately, Richard passed away about 5 years ago. So he's turning over in his grave right now that you put him in part 4. Ted White is still alive and doing well at 94 and probably would kick your ass right now for taking his part away. But now that I'm going to let you off the hook, but I want to make sure, because I know your fans out there going, it's okay. Part 6 was the best. You don't care about the rest. I get it.
That's why we got you on.
He did. Richard, I'll tell you, Richard, Steve Dash, those two men are both gone now. They passed on. But those guys loved their fans, and they had some great stories to tell the fans. And Richard was a great storyteller, as was Steve Dash. You know, Steve Dash would tell all of us all the way up to Ken, F off. If I'd have known this, none of you would have had an effing job, you know?
Yeah.
Because he'd have done it the whole time. But Richard, you know, he always delayed. Kane had another way of doing things. He stayed off the set until it was his turn because he wanted to keep that surprise element to the cast. So when he stepped up, it really was intimidating, not just somebody that we just had lunch with down at the trailer.
Yeah. And of course, part 6, I keep on saying how special part 6 was. Part 6, as far as I can recall, is the only movie in the series that had its very own song and music video dedicated to it. And that was through Alice Cooper. And
yeah, you know, for part 6, I'm very fortunate, Ray. I'll give you an example. You know, part 6 has the opening like James Bond.
Yes.
Part 6, Jason comes back to life like Frankenstein with the electricity.
Yeah.
Part 6 has a rock and roll Hall of Famer, Alice Cooper, doing the music.
Yep.
Beautiful. And part 6 is the only one where Jason wears a Batman utility belt.
Yes. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, even with the toys, like for some reason, part 6, that look for Jason in part 6 was just amazing. You know, you look at it, he had his whole little holster with, you know, machete into the sheath for the machete. You know, you're like, oh man, he's ready to go. And then you sit there and you think, you're like, well, where the hell did he keep the machete in all the other movies? You know, in this one, he has the utility belt and he has whatever. Where the hell did he keep it in all the other goddamn movies?
Yeah, so, well, if you recall on the triple decapitation, right after that, the other decapitation where the arm was pulled off, that young man was running around with a machete and the pistol belt. He thought he was getting all these tools for his paintball fight, and so that's where it came from. He took it off him and put it on himself, Jason. Same thing with the spear at the very beginning. It was part of the fence.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, the nice thing about it, I always say that I was very fortunate. Part 6, there's no bad language, like 2 bad words. There's no nudity.
Yeah.
And I've got 18 kills.
Yeah, that's right. That one was one of the ones that didn't really have nudity in it. And I think that also had one of the kills. Now that you brought up the spear part, I believe right after the cemetery scene, there was a couple that you came across, and the chick tried to offer her money. And she's like, do you want to just take my money? And then all of a sudden you just hop down, boom, spear right into her head, into the puddle. And a lot of those deaths were also incorporated into the Friday the 13th game that recently came out as well. And that Jason is one of the best Jasons in that game, you know, when you play Friday the 13th game. But how was it working with Alice Cooper on The Man Behind the Mask?
You know, great, number one. He's a professional. He's a Hall of Famer. You can never say enough about that gentleman. I see him once or twice a year the last 2 or 3 years that I've been out doing conventions. I put full wardrobe on and do photo ops with the fans, Alice Cooper and myself. But working with Alice Cooper, the ironic side of it is in 1972 was my first concert, was Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare, when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Wow.
How was seeing him that early on? How was that?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Matt. Say it. I'm old. Say it, Matt. I'll get you. I'm right behind you, buddy. Just thinking about that. Don't break out in a sweat, bro. Anyway, which is kind of, again, ironic. Here in 1972, I'm 16, and I'm going to a concert with a girl, and I'm seeing Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. Then in 1986, you know, I'm working with him. So just kind of a full circle of craziness.
Yeah. Now, when that happened, was that kind of like, were you a little starstruck at first? Like, hey, I saw Alice, back in the day, and now I'm standing right here with him doing this music video with him. And do you know how that came to be? Did Alice offer to do that? Did they ask Alice to do it? How did that actually come up? Because as I said, it's the only movie that's had its own video and song for the movie itself.
Well, my understanding is Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director, and Frank Mancuso Jr. from Paramount Studios, that was their doing to get Alice Cooper to do the music back in '86. And he did The Man Behind the Mask, and he's back. And they became very popular specifically for the series. But more important, everybody remembers Jason Lives because of it. It's a huge commodity to the value of part 6. As far as starstruck, I'm starstruck when I see everybody because I'm very humble that I'm there. My career, when I retired, I was the chief operating officer, general manager. I had 2 casino resorts.
Oh, wow.
Give or take 2,500 employees. I had a nice position. I had Alice Cooper perform in one of my venues. Everybody from CCR to, Alan Jackson performed for me, and I would meet them and have them sign guitars for my collection. But I'm still humble every time I sit there and Alice Cooper is next to me and William Shatner's the next table over and the Fonz is 4 tables down at a convention. And I'm sitting there going, I wore a hockey mask. You never know, I guess. You just never know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same thing with the wrestling world too. I was able to wrestle Jake the Snake Roberts, who also happened to do stuff with Alice Cooper,
Right.
way back in the day of WrestleMania. And it's that whole thing that I sit back and I'm like, hey, it's cool that I was able to do all these cool things. That spurred off into a TV show that, now ended up being this podcast. So, it's like you just kind of sit back and you're like, man, all that's cool. But, now where I am at now, that built the whole foundation. And, I still see people, local wrestling fans every so often, they go, hey, blah, 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 talking about something that happened in 2007. And I'm like, I've had 5 concussions. Thank you, but I don't remember. It's all completely gone. And of course, this is the Happy Hour podcast. CJ, do you drink?
Do I drink? I'll take the 5th Amendment.
What we're going to do is we're going to get into our beer of the week real quick. And that Matt brought this. It's from Oscar Blues Brewery, and it's 1050.
1050.
Yeah, 1050. And I think it's pretty good. So the reason why I asked is I was going to ask what your go-to was. If
I'm just a simple Miller person, but is that a wheat beer or an ale?
It's an Imperial Stout.
Okay, so that's got to be some powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's 10 points.
You got to remember, I spent a few years in Germany when I was in the military, so I did understand the brewery. And true story, back in about 91 or 92, I opened up the first microbrewery casino in Las Vegas, Holy Cow Casino Brewery.
Oh, nice. That's good stuff.
A 10-barrel system. So I learned well back before everybody got into it, the brewery mentality, the basics. I was the general manager of that casino, and we put a 10-barrel system in.
Oh, nice. And speaking, actually, Oscar Blues, we had a beer from them. I think it was 3 months ago we had a beer. And it was weird. It was in a green can. It had a little honeycomb on the front. And we were sitting there, and one of the guys who gave it to us, he cleans beer lines. And he's like, hey, one of the reps told me, pretty much Oscar Blues, they're in Colorado. And he's like, this little honeycomb on the front, he's like, when you're done drinking, what that's there for is someone can take a knife, cut out the honeycomb, and they can use it to smoke weed out of. And I was like, oh man, like you don't think about that. And you're like, oh man, Colorado, it's legal over there. So, you're drinking and smoking at the same time. You're like, oh man, hey, let's get into that. And real quick, we're going to give a shout out. Of course, we're heading into December. This is our first December episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to unveil our new shot of the month, which is Jack Daniel's Winter Jack. It's Tennessee cider. I had an argument with Jess on whether or not this was actually cider or just cider flavored Jack Daniels. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out right now. So Matt, here, I'm going to give you this.
Well, why don't you do 3 quick shots and we'll know in about 2 minutes. Impress me.
And CJ, do you drink liquor?
Well, let me put it this way. When I was younger and I had a few shots, I was more of a Patron kind of guy.
Okay.
If I went to a bar, I would usually get 3 shots, line them up, 1 Miller, I'd shoot all 3 of the shots within 10 minutes.
Oh,
in
man.
15 minutes, I'd be where I want to be. Why waste time to get there?
Yeah. That's extremely true. And
that was actually my strategy too.
Dude, how many times, and in the wrestling business, there'd be times where we would go wrestle shows. We'd be like, hey, there's this strip club we really want to go to in West Virginia and, in Pennsylvania. Why don't we go there, wrestle the first match, get out of there, and then go drink till about 4 a.m. at the strip club? So,
we told those stories.
Yeah. And there was a place we went to. They did 25-cent draft beers for what was it, 20 minutes, I think? Yeah,
I think it was a half hour.
Yeah, half hour. So we each went up and put down $20. And we ended up, they did it twice, once at 11 and once at 2 a.m. because they closed at 4. And we ended up with 2 of the biggest 3-dimensional beer mids that you ever seen in your life. I have no idea to this day how we ever got home. Yeah, it's insane. So, all right, let's see. Here we go. That's good shit. That's good. That's
all
really
right, get a couple more down so we can see how your demeanor changes.
Wow. Yeah. Next thing you know,
me and the fans want to watch you guys and see if you start slurring.
One of our other buddies, he fills in every so often. He's a fellow wrestler. We did an episode where we talked about our wrestling careers, and he was on. And no bullshit, he sat here. He drank, what was it, 8 or 9 beers?
I think it was 12.
In the first about 12. In like the first 15 minutes of the podcast. By the time we make it to the second half, he's so blitzed. It's just hilarious. So what we're going to do real quick, so we're going to get into our games also. So we're going to start off with Never Have I Ever. And what I'll do is we randomly draw cards out of the deck, and I'll read them off, and we'll all go through and say if we've ever done it. And I'm pretty sure most of the 3 of us have probably done this at some point. Never have I ever spanked someone too hard.
I don't think that's possible.
I think I have. I mean, because you got to look at it, on 2 spectrums. You're a wrestler, but also it's like, okay, have I smacked the ass a little too hard?
I may have made 1 or 2 young ladies cry. I may have had a girl call me and say, "You son of a bitch, I couldn't sit down for 3 days." I may have.
What about you, CJ? Or are you going to plead the 5th?
No, I'm going to say, well, honestly, I forgot the question.
Never have I ever spanked somebody too hard.
I'm just kidding. First and foremost, I never admit anything I've ever done.
Fair enough.
First and foremost, let me tell you young men why. In my days when I was your age, they didn't have videos, YouTube, cameras, iPhones.
Yeah.
You were still working a roller 110 film, so there is nothing to prove anything of the past except I don't recall. Now, today's world, you all screwed.
Yeah.
Everything is recorded from you going to the toilet to you being on this podcast. So by me saying I never ever, because I just sit on it and stay neutral. My name is CJ Graham, and I approve this message.
All right, cool.
I'm running for politics.
So, Matt, here's what we're going to do. CJ, have you ever played Cards Against Humanity?
No, I have not.
No, you have not.
I ran casinos. Remember, I don't gamble.
This is going to get very interesting. So, Matt, I'll let you go ahead and read this off. What we're going to do, we're going to read off a black card, and we're going to give you 6 options. And out of those 6 options, you're going to pick which one you think best fits the black card that we read off. So you want to read those off, Matt?
All right. Well, you read the black one first.
Yeah, read the black one.
So the black card says, "Rub-a-dub-dub, blank, get out of the tub." Okay, so your 6 choices are
Whitney Houston's dead body.
All types of girls, even ugly ones. Staying hydrated. A bear. Fresh air with Terry Crews.
Terry Crews.
Terry Gross.
Terry Crews. I don't know.
You only have 1 shot, Matt.
A little girl with a knife. Jesus. Sewing 2 hamsters together to make double hamster supreme.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm sticking with the bear because bare necessities.
There you go. If I had to choose one, I think Rub-a-dub-dub. Let's see what it was. I will say I think I'm going to go with a bear because I think of because he said bare necessities, which makes sense, but also a bear in a tub. I think would be kind of interesting also.
I'm gonna do a write-in vote for anybody who's seen The Big Lebowski. A marmot.
A marmot.
Nice marmot. If you've seen The Big Lebowski, you get it.
And
I'm gonna go with all types of girls, even ugly ones.
That's because you've had 3 shots.
Right. He's got the goggles. He's got the goggles.
We're just really messed up.
What do they call that? Beer goggles?
Yeah.
And CJ, with doing everything with Friday the 13th part 6, who were your favorite people to work with in that in Friday the 13th part 6? I'm sure everybody was great. Is there anybody particularly that you clicked with on the set when you were filming the movie?
Well, I had the opportunity to work with Tom Matthews, who's a great actor.
Oh yeah.
Done some great work out there. Still working heavily, doing producing and acting. And I see him maybe once a year at a convention now. I have the opportunity to meet him and his wife, and he's a good human being, good man. So I enjoy seeing him on a regular basis. Tom Finley, funny as hell. I mean, he's the same today as he was 35 years ago. I can't get a word in with him edgewise. He's got to be the fastest talker in the world and just dynamic, full of energy. Darcy, you see her out there sometimes, and I see her at some of the conventions, and she's still just a lady. Just loves her fans, loves her career, what she's done. So, again, not trying to be politically correct, but they're all such good people. I was just honored to be there. I mean, I was the outsider. And here we are 35, 36 years later talking about it. So I'm just humbled that, number one, I had a good time to work with them. I still get to see some of them at the conventions. And like I said earlier, I'm just so glad that, we were so good about our stunts that nobody got hurt, especially the actors and actresses I worked with. They trusted me. Yeah. Tom Finley, when I took that knife, that hunting knife, it was a real hunting knife. I slammed it forward and stopped about 4 or 5 inches from his head, a real knife. And then they reversed it with cameras. Darcy, I took her head, grabbing it with both my hands and threw it into a camera lens physically and stopped it 3-4 inches from the camera lens. She allowed me to physically put her there. And Tom, I'm gonna tell you right now, Tom Matthews probably did 95% of his stunts underwater where I had a hold of him. I mean, physically I was chained down, I was stuck, but I had a hold of his feet and I was shaking him underwater and he was breathing. There was a point where we just I'd let go, and we both have safety divers come in and put regulators in our mouths or our mouths. So you got to kind of understand, I'm humbly appreciative to have been there with them. And when I see them now, it's just good memories.
Yeah. And you've been around a lot of the other actors. From what you know, were a lot of the Friday movies filmed at the same location? Because I know they kind of varied a little bit. But
they actually all varied quite a bit, but the similarities, the basic, the cabins are the same. Where we did ours, Covington, Georgia, is still a cabin. It's still a lake. It's still a campground, and it looks 90% the same as it did in 1986. People still go there and tour it, spend the night there. And I'm told that the Forest Service people are very proud of the fact that it was shooting in 1986. Jason Lives.
Nice.
So you're best known for Friday the 13th, but is there any other movie you've done that stands out as one of your favorites?
Well, I've only done 3 so far. I did the Friday the 13th. The Hell Cop was a blast because I got to work with all those great. But Vengeance was fun. When I retired 3.5 years ago, gave me the opportunity to step out. You may or may not know that they did inquire about Jason versus Freddy when I was running casino resorts, and I wasn't going to quit a high executive paying job just to go do a quick movie.
Yeah.
I was slotted for part 7. Kane Hodder will tell you that. He really wanted the part, so even though I was slotted, he had to go to John, who he'd worked with, and John had to go to Paramount to make that change before we started shooting. So I'd always had my finger out there, but just until I retired, it wasn't really my thing. Now that I can do what I want, guys, Vengeance was fun. I got to grow a beard for 4 months. When you see it, that's a real beard. But put a wig on me. I still have the wardrobe. Getting a chance to play opposite of Mr. Brooks, Jason Brooks, who plays Jason in that film. And Jason Brooks and his crew right now, Anthony, are working on a script for part 2 Vengeance called Bloodline.
Nice.
And they've asked me to come back to take more of a principal role beyond where I was, more 50-50 with Jason, because now the father has been exposed, and it's an opportunity to see 2 sides of 2 different generations of homicidal killers. So that might be fun. I just finished a film this year. I should apologize, I forgot. 13 Fanboy, Deborah Voorhees, back in January, and Kane Hodder is in it. Laura Park Lincoln is in it.
Oh, nice.
Deborah Voorhees is in it. You guys remember Dee Wallace?
Yes, we interviewed Dee Wallace.
She was on the
Dee
show.
Wallace has the lead.
Nice.
I get to save her basically from being killed. So, you know, there's been some on hold because of 2020's unfortunate issues that are transpired. I mean, we've lost a lot of people, 250,000 give or take, due to the virus. But hopefully 2021, we can get back to shooting some films and putting some smiles on people's face.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this also when we were talking about a little bit with the movies and how I thought a snow scene would be good. I always sat there and I thought on my, you know, I at least feel that, you know, Friday the 13th always has a high kill count, you know, and I was like, what if they just do a movie where, you know, the government, like, you know, the mayor goes against, you know, them saying don't do anything at Crystal Lake, and they have a music festival at the camp. Could you imagine that? Like, because at that point, it's like you have all the, you know, you have the musicians, you have all these people coming to the music festival, and then you have Jason. So that's kind of like a field day at that point for Jason. I'm like, could you imagine that Jason, like during Woodstock, you know, just, you know, you look out.
Get Alice Cooper there.
Yeah. Alice Cooper is playing and they just look out and you just see Jason just beheading people in the crowd. And it's like, you know, at that point, you're just kind of like, well, what the shit? Like that I feel. Yeah.
I got to ask, because I'm a gambler. How did you get involved in the casino business?
About 1981, I started in security and then became a dealer. I actually wore a pink shirt dealing 21 in craps and roulette at Circus Reno, and put a couple 3 years there. Then went down to LA, stayed there until about 91, and then went back to Las Vegas and stayed in the casino industry as a floorman, a pit boss, casino manager, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, that's awesome. That's good stuff, man. And so with that, how did the casino stuff lead into the Friday the 13th stuff? How did you get kind of intertwined with that? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but how did you actually make that full transition from, you know, doing the casino to doing the movies? And then I'm sure you probably stayed in the casino stuff right after. So how did that, you know, come across?
Well, I left Reno in about 83, 84 to go to LA. I was interested in possibly LAPD or something of that nature with the Los Angeles area. I started running nightclubs. I've run several nightclubs down there. In the club I was running, I got introduced to the people that did the special effects for Friday the 13th, and quote unquote, the rest is history, because I did the movie and a few things. I did 5 or 6 national commercials, Miller Beer, Gatorade, AT&T, Colgate. And then I knew physically I'm very big, 6'3", 6'4", 250. You know, I'm bigger than Schwarzenegger on his best day when he was Mr. Universe. He was 233. So you got to realize I'm somewhat large compared to today, where you've got Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Oh yeah.
There's a normality, but back then that wasn't normal. Stallone, 5'11".
Yeah.
I ran a private nightclub for Jackie Collins called the Original Tramp of London in the Beverly Center in Beverly Hills, members only. So Stallone, he'd come in, table 5, 2 bottles of Cristal. Prince would come into the club part of it, table 43, red wine always.
Oh, wow.
Tom Jones, et cetera, et cetera. So I really got to meet a lot of people when I was younger, but I was big, compared to the normal person. So I just thought, after I had put some money in the bank, well, let me go back to Las Vegas. And I knew a casino manager, and I called him. He said, come on, whenever you get here, I'll give you a job. So I went back to being a floor person, a pit boss. Then I just kind of moved in around until I became a general manager. Well, I went through the ranks. I was a pit boss. I was casino manager at the Flamingo for many years. I worked for Wynn. I worked for Caesars. I worked for the Palms.
Man, so you were around.
Island Casino back in the 90s.
Yeah.
You guys got to remember, in 87, unfortunately, there are pictures to prove it. You know, I was at Chippendales in Culver City.
I'm sure.
Holy
I'm
shit.
sure that was an adventure.
On the wall over here, I still have a picture with me and two other guys, cuffs and collars, and I still have my cuffs and collars framed on the wall.
That's great. Now you talk about your size. Has anybody, and you were kind of in that era where, wrestlers will be discovered for their size. You
Correct.
would have one person walk in like a Dusty Rhodes or a Ric Flair, be like, hey man, you're big. Why don't you go train with, Luthez? Why don't you go train with this guy?
True story. I considered it. I did consider it because I thought, just so you know, to drag it out a little further, I thought, what about being Jason and coming out and wrestling? Just so you know, my buddies, Darren McBee was a wrestler. He was also a gladiator, if you remember the Gladiators.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So Darren also worked with me at Chippendales. So Darren did go on to be a wrestler and doing some different things. So I had actually thought, why not Nitro from, the same thing. He was a bodybuilder doing things. Darren also played up at Universal Studios, played Conan in the show up there, the live show. So a lot of the guys I hung out in that circle, all big physically. A couple of them did go into the wrestling scene, which would have been in the 80s. It was starting to grow its roots, so to speak. But honestly, I remember in the late 60s going down to my grandmother's church, watching wrestlers with my little brother.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy to think because WCW was probably, if anybody were doing it, it'd probably be WCW because they brought in RoboCop. They brought in Dennis Rodman,
Yep.
and so, if anything, if you were going to do it as Jason, it probably would have been WCW because they did a lot of that
well,
kind of
funny
stuff.
enough, you probably know this, Ray. There was a guy on Independence for a while that was doing a Jason gimmick.
Yeah, he was.
Jason the Terrible.
Yeah, he was doing Jason the Terrible. But could you imagine if they would have actually brought you in? And I mean, that's the thing. When you said it and you talked about your size, I'm like, CJ probably would have been great in the wrestling business. And, a guy your size, you don't really need to do a lot. You just come out, you look and people always shit on John Cena. John Cena's a big guy.
Big man.
Cena, that's a presence. That guy is a presence, just like how you're a presence as Jason. People see you. And, even nowadays they have you guys at the conventions dress up like Jason. So just imagine. And is that stuff more recent? I feel like more at the horror conventions that it's more recent having you guys dress up in full costume.
Actually, I'm kind of proud to say that I can say without doubt, Kane Hodder did it one time about 3.5 years ago. He did the part 7 with John doing the makeup and stuff, but it was so expensive and took so many hours for him to get into it that he only did it one time. That about 3.5 years ago, I did my first wardrobe, Days of the Dead, Atlanta. And for me to put the wardrobe together, I worked with 6 or 7 different special effects people and was able to put the wardrobes probably within 95% of accuracy because I have all the photos to make sure it was picture perfect. And then I talked to Kane after that. Kane, why don't you do, well, it's too expensive for part 7. I said, why don't you do part 8?
Yeah.
The wet wardrobe. And he did. He put it together. And then the other Jasons, Michael Myers, Sid. I mean, everybody started going, wow, the wardrobe is where it's at because you'll have 80, 90, 100 people that will pay to take a photograph with you in wardrobe. And it's an honor, because when they walk over and in through that wall and look at you and you're just standing there, as you indicated, Ray, just the presence, they're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
They are amazed. And then, of course, if I go ahead and grab onto their collar and pull them towards me, it just fright mirror for all stations.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like, especially knowing, like, you can go to places, I'm sure you can go to haunted houses and there's guys dressed up like Jason. To me, that's not the same. To walk up to someone like you or Kane or someone who played Jason, who is in that suit, who is the real fucking deal underneath that suit, who knows how to play a Jason doing that. That to you is just kind of like, all right, this is really cool. This is the real Jason.
It's the mentality, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the real deal, as one would say in the wrestling world. But I do appreciate it because, again, I look back and go, wow, now that I'm doing them, I think the first show of 2021, and it's been 2.5 years since I was there, will be Days of the Dead Atlanta. It'll be the last weekend of February. And if everything goes well and vaccines get out and people feel safe, that show will go on as scheduled. And then we'll go from there. Monster Mania on the West Coast, huge. I mean, it's one of the largest 2 horror conventions in the United States, along with Texas Frightmare in Texas.
Yeah, Monster Mania, Hunt Valley, that's actually 25 minutes from us. So,
yeah. And Dave has the Hunt Valley show, and he also has one in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Yeah, Cherry Hill, those are the 2.
And then Lloyd has Texas Frightmare, and then Pete has a great show down in Florida, Spooky Empire. And then the list goes on. Comic cons, horror cons.
Yeah.
They're amazing how it's blended, where, like I said, I'll be looking down the row and there's the Fonz, or there's Lou Ferrigno over there, or there's, Karate Kid, and then of course there's 2 full rows of wrestlers, both female and male.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, one of the most badass that I've seen at a show, and I just saw him a few months ago at a show, is the gentleman that played Deep Lagoon, Monster on the Deep Lagoon.
Okay. Yeah.
This man is probably 90 years old. Badass. He sits there, signs autographs, and you got to remember when he was doing special effects, Monster from what is it? Monster
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
He did that stuff back in the 40s and 50s when you didn't have all the safety divers, and he was just throwing all this equipment on and jumping in the water. Yeah. He could hold his breath for almost 4 minutes. I mean, this guy is just amazing when you see him. He's just one stout, tough man. He comes to these shows, and it's an honor to see him. I mean, he's just there plucking away, and he has a line of people getting his autograph.
And it's crazy because stuff like that, like, as you said, you got the whole, lightning brought back, kind of like Frankenstein's monster, Creature from the Black Lagoon, all those they built up. There wouldn't be, I always said that Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy, and Leatherface are kind of like the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula and all that of my era, Right. So just seeing that go on, it's just great. And thank you for everything you did with part 6. We're nearing our time. We're coming up on the hour mark. CJ, is there anything that you want to plug? Any place where people can find you? If they want to reach out, talk to you, all that good stuff.
It's real simple. I mean, you can just Google CJ Graham, and I'll be in the top 4 or 5 listings. There'll be something about me. One of those just happens to be my personal website, where people can purchase machetes, hockey mask, and 8x10s, personalized, autographed. Been extremely successful, even up to, unfortunately, this year, because nobody can go out. So if you just look up CJ Graham, you'll find my website. It's jasonvoorheesstore.com. You can put jason6.com. Everything just goes right to it. It's just one of those things. I'm very fortunate. I'm looking forward to getting back out next year and having some fun. This year, I did get to do one show in Las Vegas, one show in Indianapolis, and I did get to do Sweden in February before all of this got completely shut down. But I'm looking forward to next year. The fans, I can't say thank you enough for their support. Ray, Matt, you guys, all 3 of you, the 3 Musketeers. I mean, here we are having this dialogue, and it's 36 years ago we did this friggin' film, 34 years ago, and it just keeps going. It's like the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps going.
Oh, yeah, and we appreciate it. Of course, for those of you watching live at home, we will be back next week. We will be with Matt's friend Kara. She's a medium. She's going to have tarot cards, do some readings, all that fun stuff. Also, farther on down the line, we are going to have Doug Bradley, a.k.a. Pinhead.
Great man.
He will be on the program sometime in January. Vincent Painter, who played for the NFL, for the Vikings, the Redskins, and the Broncos. He will also be on the program.
How about those Raiders? Had to put it out there, man.
Yeah. What about the Redskins? Well, not the Redskins. The Washington football team, who has an awful record, but they're in first place. That's insane.
Hey, I go right back to, if you go in the other room, there's a Ken Stabler jersey autographed on the wall right next to Jerry Rice. So it's either or we just move on.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 is one of those years where if you look at it, you could see it's a 2020 Super Bowl champions football team. Like, that would just kind of, make
it's not fair to say it's not the same. To the
Yeah.
players on the field in every sport this year, it is the same to them.
Yeah.
If they play 100 games or if they play 10 games or whatever, when they get that championship ring, belt, whatever their sport is,
Yep.
it's still a championship. So I would never take anything away from any of those athletes, those women, those men. They've kicked some serious butt through a pandemic
My Lakers
to
did.
get where they're at.
Oh yeah, I mean, even with baseball, they hustled it out with baseball, and they're playing through COVID and all that to keep us all entertained. Just like guys like you who are willing to do these podcasts, go on Facebook Live. We appreciate it because
absolutely.
we try to make ourselves a little bit different with our games. All that fun stuff. And there's so many politically driven podcasts out there right now that we try to stay away from that. We're like, we just want to come out. We want to have fun. We want people to have fun. We want to ask interesting questions and have interesting guests. So, CJ,
Don't forget drinking.
And of course, having some drinks and just having a good time and letting it all.
Make sure hey, happy hour podcast. Hey, you fans, thanks for allowing me to be part of your show the last hour, and everybody enjoy the holidays.
All right, thanks, CJ. We'll catch up with you later.
Peace.